for me, that's the real tension currently in the media landscape is having that sustainable media propositions locally, regionally and nationally. I mean, the transformation across the time that I've been working has been extraordinary. When I began at the Chronicle and Echo in Northampton, you had to type everything. You had a carbon paper to save that was your kind of filed copy of what you'd written. So you kept what was called the black, which was the copy. The paper went off to the news editor. They subbed it all, and it went off down to the compositors who typed it all back in again, and off it went to print. So you could hardly imagine a more arcane process than that. But while I was there, computers were introduced, very basic computers, green screens, always falling apart and not working. But even then, when we had computers, you still had to write it in the computer. The news editor would edit it on screen, but then it would be printed off, and then it would be sent down to the compositors, who would type it all in again, because such was the strength of the print unions in those days that there was no way it was all going to be done by one person. So that's kind of how basic it was back in those days. And I guess you go to where, when I left PA, clearly instant publishing across the world. We could have video for anything that we were doing. We were delivering live video. We were delivering content that was going just to customers who wanted the words, but we could send ready to publish digital content that had graphics, video, and live updates and instantaneous updates. So, I mean, to try and get your head around those changes is extraordinary. When we first started on the BBC News website, you could probably get a little bit of video up that would be grainy and jumpy and would maybe last 3 or 4 seconds, and everybody thought it was dreadful. And now, well, look what you can have now with live streaming and access to video, and video right at the centre of news products now, in a way you could never have imagined back when we first launched the BBC News website. And when I was the editor of CFAX, I mean, we rightly said that CFAX was the first interactive news service in the world. You could update news headlines on the teletext service on your TV instantaneously. It was kind of a live news service. But when you describe to people now what CFAX was, they can barely believe how clunky and ridiculous it sounds, that you have to put your TV on and press a button and wait for pages to come round. But in its day, it was right at the cutting edge. It was the quickest form of news that you could get before mobiles and the internet. And then, as I say, the internet kind of overtook CFAX, and they came together. And then during my time, either on the websites at the BBC or in my time at PA, I mean, we have gone to an extraordinary level now. And not only with what the content you put together, but the level of understanding around what the audience is using, how they're engaging with the content is absolutely extraordinary. When back in the day, you'd be kind of publishing into a black hole and not really knowing who was looking at anything. To a point now where you know what they're looking at, how long they're looking at it for, what their journeys are around your content. So, I mean, on all fronts, whether it's the creation of the content and how we can put those different things together to how people engage with it, I mean, it's changed on every level. But it's been an extraordinary ride to go through all those changes. I laugh because when I was at CFAX, there was literally no way of knowing how many people looked at CFAX. So when we relaunched it in about 1997, I said to my deputy, how many people do you reckon look at CFAX every week? And he said, well, nobody knows. So I said, well, let's say 20 million. So this became what we always quoted, 20 million. And I still see now when people talk about CFAX, it had its 50th anniversary recently. And I heard people saying when they did pieces about it on the TV, in its heyday, it had 20 million viewers a week, and that's only a number that we made up. So we've gone from that point to a point now where you could say to almost the last person how many people have looked at the things that you're doing. So I mean, it's been an amazing ride, I would say. Well, I think I mean, it's changed. It's changed the ways that you present content. It's changed the skills that you require in a multimedia newsroom. I mean, back in the day, you know, you're either a writer, you were a photographer, and that was it. And now in a modern newsroom, you may well be the writer, but you could also be the photographer. You might also be the person who shoots some videos. So the expectations, I think, around the people who create the content have changed, and clearly the way that you can then present that content has changed. There's so many different formats that you can apply. You can be choosing to, have a very rich experience on a website or an app with words and pictures and video. You may also be choosing to produce short form news content for TikTok. So there are multiple ways that you can present the content. So I think both from a news gathering perspective, the skills and the people and what's expected of those people has changed dramatically. And then what you actually do with that content in terms of how you present it has changed significantly as well. And so the tools that you need, the way that you put that content together, all of the systems quietly behind websites and newspapers now are so sophisticated now compared to where they were. That's a really good question. I mean, as a real diehard news gatherer who cares passionately about news being told well and being told accurately and fairly, impartially, quickly, there is nothing to beat people on the ground covering news, going to courts, covering breaking news events, whether it's terror attacks or fires or dramas of one sort or another. That can only really be done well and reliably by people who go to cover those things. It's an expensive thing to do, but it's a really important thing to do. And there's clearly there's a tension there between, what can be afforded these days and what can't. But to be honest, the best news gathering is obviously done by people who are expert, who are on the ground and who go to cover those things. And that's the kind of content that should be trusted and should lie at the heart of a good journalistic proposition. So, in terms of AI, my view is that AI, if you're using it in a newsroom, it can do lots of really practical things to help. So there's lots of things in the processes every day that are very repetitive. Things around the checking of content, things around the tagging of content, searching out pictures that are relevant for a story, even things like suggesting headlines and so on. There are lots of things that AI can do, I think, to make the production process slicker. It can sometimes come up with ideas to assist with how you might search for things that you're researching. And it can maybe interrogate data better for you to find things that you're looking for. But for me, ultimately, it can help a lot, but you still need humans who are doing the news gathering. And before you publish anything, you need somebody who's going to look across things to make sure that it's all in order. Now, there'll be some places that may take a different view and will use AI to do much more of the producing of the content. For me, you need a real balance there. You need a balance between the people who can do the news gathering, the people who've got the final sign off to know that there's no legal issues with things that you're publishing. But quietly in the background there can be an awful lot of the drudgery, that the sub-editors and journalists have previously had to do, that AI can really assist with. And I think there's that's the balance I think that lots of newsrooms are wrestling with now is where do you draw that line? But for me, I think it's pretty clear where you draw the line and the things that you can let AI get on with and the things that you still need that final kind of human involvement in. Well, I think that a lot of it is around the the funding of it. Now, clearly, the print world. When I began, there was no internet, and it was only print, and there was a very strong local and regional print industry, as well as national newspapers as well. Clearly that is in decline. I mean, in many places, and many regional local newspapers have much smaller circulations than they used to have, but they have a much stronger web presence. And I think the tension there is how much of that is being given away for nothing. And as that revenue from their print circulations is dwindling, can they get the revenue from subscriptions or any other funding models to sustain their business? And I think that's that's the place where we're at the moment, where more and more are moving to at least a partial subscription basis to what they do, and the test is whether people will be prepared to appreciate the value of what they're getting from the publications they've always used, and they're prepared to pay for them online. And they may have been prepared to pay for that in print down the years. It's a bit of a hard jump to get them to do the same online, and that's where people are now, and some are having great success with that. Others are a bit slower to get to that point. And while that's going on, you probably don't have quite the money you used to have to fund the journalism. So I think that's for me, that's the big tension really, is how you have a sustainable media industry when some of those revenue streams are under pressure. But equally there are opportunities there. If there are some kind of local wildernesses now, then that can open up the opportunity for some very localized, specialized websites that can do a small amount of local journalism really well. And the test again there will be whether there's enough people in a location who will be prepared to pay for that. So I think that's for me, that's the real tension currently in the media landscape, is having that sustainable media propositions locally, regionally and nationally. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that people's interest in news hasn't declined. People still want to know locally what's happening in their local towns. They're still interested. It's just finding a sustainable model for doing that. I think then probably the other wider issue is there's been a gradual decline in people's trust in the media for all kinds of reasons, down the years when various media organisations have been found out for tapping phones or whatever it might be. And I think people just generally getting tired of some of the kind of constant feed of bad news, and people avoiding news. So there's a real challenge there, I think, in how you maintain a news agenda that can be a good balance between the light and the shade in the day-to-day world that we live in, but also how you can create content that people trust, and I think that's a real challenge. Now, for me, working for the last 10 years at somewhere like PA, I'm really proud of what we do, because we can look people in the eye and say we don't have an axe to grind. We don't have a political viewpoint. The only thing we believe in is delivering both sides of an argument, so that you can hear voices from both sides of a political debate or whatever. We publish it as quickly as we can. We offer no views of our own within that content, and that's a really good, pure place to be, I think. And that's the most refreshing part about the role that I've had up until recently, working for an organisation that just believes in telling it quickly, fairly, and as accurately as possible, and being very honest if it makes a mistake, correcting it, but people knowing that actually what they get from an organisation like PA is fair and accurate, and with no side to it. And I think that's a very satisfying place to be, and I think that's the kind of content that people appreciate.